I'm 102 years old, and if I could go back in time, I would stop myself from making these 5 mistakes that almost destroyed my life. These 5 habits didn't just change my destiny, they saved me. And if you're listening to this right now, you still have time to use them before it's too late. When people see my age, they think I must be wise, peaceful, fulfilled. But the truth is, wisdom didn't come early and peace didn't come easily. For most of my life, I lived on autopilot, waking up every day, chasing things that looked important but felt empty at night. I remember being young and strong, telling myself I had plenty of time, believing that real life would start someday in the future, after more money, after more success, after more approval. Years passed quietly while I waited. Relationships faded, dreams collected dust. My health slowly cracked, one ignored warning at a time. No one tells you this when you're young. Life doesn't announce when you're wasting it. It just lets you do it. I built routines that drained me instead of habits that healed me. I copied what everyone else was doing, never stopping to ask if it was actually making me happy. I stayed busy so I wouldn't have to feel empty. I stayed loud so I wouldn't hear my own thoughts. And the most dangerous part, from the outside, my life looked successful. People congratulated me, they admired me. But at night, alone, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. It wasn't one big failure that almost ruined me. It was small daily choices repeated for decades. That's why habits matter more than motivation. Motivation fades, but habits quietly shape your destiny. Everything changed the day I finally stopped lying to myself. I realized that if nothing changed, I would grow old full of regrets instead of memories. That realization didn't come with firework. It came with fear, deep, honest fear. Fear of dying without ever truly living. So I started small, painfully small. One habit at a time, no shortcuts, no overnight miracles. Just quiet decisions made when no one was watching. Those 5 habits didn't make me rich or famous. They gave me something far more rare, clarity, peace, and a life that finally felt like mine. If you feel stuck right now, if you feel tired for no clear reason, if you feel like time is moving fast and you're standing still, this story is for you. Because I was you once, and I would give anything to hear these words sooner. I'm 102 years old now, and this is the part most people don't expect me to say. The first habit that truly changed my life wasn't money, wasn't motivation, and wasn't success. It was the day I finally learned how to sit alone without running from myself. For most of my life, I stayed busy on purpose. Noise, people, work, goals, anything to avoid silence, because silence forces you to face the truth. And the truth was uncomfortable. I didn't like who I had become. So I distracted myself. But one night, after losing something I loved deeply, I sat alone with no phone, no TV, no plan, and something broke open inside me. That's when I realized, if you can't sit with yourself, you don't own your life, you're escaping it. From that day on, I spent at least 10 quiet minutes daily just thinking, breathing, reflecting. No music, no scrolling. That habit rewired my mind. It gave me clarity people spend decades chasing. The second habit was brutal but necessary. I stopped lying to myself, not to others, to myself. I stopped saying I'm fine when I wasn't. I stopped blaming the world for choices I made. I admitted when I was afraid, lazy, jealous, or wrong. That honesty hurt at first, but it freed me. because the moment you tell yourself the truth, change becomes possible. Most people stay stuck because they protect their ego instead of their future. The third habit changed my destiny completely. I learned to act even when I didn't feel ready. I wasted years waiting for confidence, motivation, perfect timing. It never comes first. Action comes first. Confidence follows. Every major breakthrough in my life happened when I was scared and moved anyway. I applied when I felt unqualified. I spoke when my voice shook. I started when I had no guarantee, and every time life met me halfway. The fourth habit saved my relationships. I learned to listen without preparing my reply. I used to hear people just to respond, to win, to be right. But real connection happens when you listen to understand, not to react. When I practiced this, arguments turned into conversations, distance turned into trust, and people felt safe around me. You don't build strong bonds with words, you build them with presence. And the fifth habit, this one, changed everything faster than all the others combined. I stopped postponing my life. I stopped saying, one day. One day is a lie we tell ourselves to feel safe. I started doing small things immediately, calling people, starting projects, taking care of my body, expressing love while it still mattered. That habit alone erased decades of regret I would have carried to my grave. If you remember nothing else from this part, remember this. Your life doesn't change when circumstances change. It changes when your daily habits change. Quiet reflection, radical honesty, imperfect action, deep listening, and acting now, not later. These 5 habits didn't just improve my life, they gave it back to me. And if you're listening to this right now, it means you still have time.
Speaking the truth, the fourth habit, opened doors I thought were closed forever. I confessed to my children that I had often prioritized work over their birthdays, over school recitals, over the moments that truly mattered. I admitted that I had hidden my fears, my regrets, my struggles with pride and shame. And the relief, the weight that lifted off my shoulders the moment I spoke honestly, was more freeing than any promotion, any bonus, any recognition I had chased in my lifetime. It was in that moment I realized that honesty, vulnerability, and openness were not signs of weakness. They were the key to human connection, to healing, and to genuine happiness. I had spent decades building walls, hiding behind a mask of success, and wondering why my relationships felt hollow. Speaking the truth tore down those walls. It created spaces for forgiveness, laughter, and trust that had been impossible before. I started small. The first conversation wasn't easy. My daughter looked at me, a mix of skepticism and curiosity in her eyes, and asked, "Dad, why didn't you ever tell us how hard it really was?" I simply nodded. I didn't make excuses. I simply admitted that I had tried and failed and was trying again. And that one conversation led to a chain reaction. My son called me out of nowhere, asking to meet. My wife, who had long accepted my absence as part of life, hugged me and cried, relieved that the man she married was finally present, not just physically, but fully, emotionally, spiritually. Speaking the truth wasn't just about admitting faults or mistakes. It was about telling people what they meant to me, expressing gratitude that I had left unsaid for far too long. I called old friends. I wrote letters to colleagues who had impacted me decades earlier. I told my siblings stories from our childhood that I had kept locked away, and together we laughed and cried over memories that had faded into silence. I realized that sharing my life openly, without pretension or ego, by embracing forgiveness, I began to reclaim my time, my energy, and my peace. I stopped arguing with people over past mistakes that no longer served any purpose. I let go of toxic grudges that had silently shaped my behavior. I forgave myself for my own mistakes, the missed opportunities, the harsh words, the failed promises, and in doing so, I found a quiet sense of acceptance that had eluded me for decades. The sixth habit, embracing curiosity, was something I had abandoned long ago. As a young man, I was endlessly curious, asking questions, exploring ideas, and experimenting with my career and hobbies. But life, responsibility, and fear gradually stripped that curiosity away. I became rigid, predictable, safe. By my 70s, I realized that I had stopped learning, stopped seeking, stopped wondering. So I started again. I picked up books on subjects I had never dared explore: philosophy, astronomy, art, psychology. I asked questions, not for work, not for accolades, but for the sheer joy of understanding. I traveled to new places, not for Instagram posts or sightseeing checklists, but to immerse myself in the unknown, to feel the world in ways that reminded me I was alive. Curiosity opened my mind, brought joy to my days, and reconnected me to the excitement of possibility that I had long forgotten. The seventh habit, the final, yet perhaps the most critical, was learning to prioritize presence over productivity. In the first 80 years of my life, I equated being busy with being successful, believing that the more I did, the better my life would become. But I learned, painfully, that life is not measured in tasks completed or hours logged. Life is measured in moments experienced fully. I started with my mornings. I woke up not to emails, not to deadlines, but to the sunrise, the smell of coffee, the quiet hum of life. I spent time with my family without distractions, with my phone silenced, my work paused. I listened. I observed. I laughed. I cried. I felt. Each day small. By the time I reached 101, I realized that my life was no longer defined by the mistakes I had made, but by the lessons I had learned and the habits I had cultivated. Each day became an opportunity to live intentionally, to practice the habits that had transformed my outlook and my reality. Speaking the truth, forgiving, embracing curiosity, and choosing presence had created a ripple effect that I could see in every corner of my existence. I found myself revisiting old memories, not with regret, but with insight. The arguments I had held onto for years suddenly seemed trivial. The possessions I had once valued so highly now felt meaningless. And the accolades I had chased? They had brought fleeting pride, but no lasting satisfaction. What mattered most was the depth of the connections I nurtured and the clarity of my own mind and heart. This is why I want to share with you the next habit that reshaped everything: discipline paired with freedom. At first, this may sound contradictory, but it's not. True freedom emerges not from chaos or indulgence, but from disciplined choices that align with our values and goals. I began setting boundaries, not just at work, but in my personal life. I limited distractions, minimized commitments that didn't serve me, and created rituals that supported my mental, emotional, and physical well-being. For example, I stopped answering emails outside certain hours. I decided that weekends were sacred for family and reflection. I learned to say no, something I had never mastered in my youth. Every no created a space for a yes that truly mattered. Every boundary reinforced the freedom to choose my days intentionally, to spend time on what really counted. Discipline, paradoxically, had unlocked a life of deeper freedom and joy. The next habit was mindful reflection. For decades, I had rushed through life with barely a moment to pause. Even vacations were spent planning the next move, worrying about the next goal. But reflection allowed me to pause, to assess, to recalibrate. Each evening, I would review my day, noting moments of gratitude, opportunities one missed, and ways I could improve tomorrow. I would reflect on conversations, noticing when I had been present and when I had been distracted. These moments became small anchors in the storm of life, grounding me, sharpening my perspective, and allowing me to act with clarity rather than reaction. I also started mentoring younger generations, not for recognition or prestige, but to pass on the insights I had gained through mistakes, victories, and heartbreak. I realized that sharing knowledge, wisdom, and life lessons is one of the few ways to leave a lasting legacy. My grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and even strangers who sought guidance benefited from stories of failure, perseverance, and triumph. Through teaching, I continued to learn. each interaction refining my understanding of human nature, relationships, and purpose. Then came the habit of intentional gratitude. Gratitude is often mistaken for a fleeting emotion, but it's a deliberate practice. Every morning, I listed 3 things I was thankful for. Sometimes they were monumental, like the reconciliation with a long-lost friend. Other times, they were small, seemingly insignificant. The warmth of sunlight on my face, the laughter of a child nearby, the smell of freshly brewed coffee. These small acts of recognition rewired my brain. I began to notice abundance rather than lack, connection rather than isolation, beauty rather than monotony. Gratitude became the lens through which I viewed my life, transforming ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. I learned the power of intentional generosity. For years, I equated generosity with money. I gave, yes, but often reluctantly or with strings attached. Now, generosity became deliberate, mindful, and heartfelt. I offered my time, my attention, my wisdom, my presence. I learned that giving without expectation creates a cycle of fulfillment that nothing else can replicate. A simple act, listening to a friend, helping a neighbor, mentoring someone at work, could create ripples far beyond my imagination. Generosity became a habit that enriched both the giver and the receiver, a quiet engine of joy that powered my days. The habit of resilient adaptability followed. Life, as I had discovered painfully, is unpredictable. Illness, loss, disappointment, and betrayal were constants. I could not control what happened, but I could control my response. I began training myself to adapt gracefully. When plans collapsed, I sought lessons, not despair. When relationships faltered, I looked for understanding, not revenge. This habit gave me the strength to navigate uncertainty with equanimity. I found that resilient adaptability was not merely survival. It was thriving amid change, seeing opportunity in challenge, and maintaining hope when circumstances seemed bleak. Another transformative habit was celebrating small wins. For years, I had chased monumental achievements, promotion, wealth, recognition, but overlooked daily victories. I began acknowledging small accomplishments, finishing a book, learning a new skill, reconnecting with a friend, preparing a healthy meal, completing a walk. Each celebration, no matter how minor, reinforced positive behavior and brought joy into routine days. The aggregation of these small wins, I realized, became the foundation for larger transformations. Life was not only about grand gestures. It was a mosaic of small, meaningful actions consistently practiced. Creating rituals of joy became another pillar of transformation. I learned that waiting for happiness to arrive was a mistake. Instead, I engineered it intentionally. Music in the morning, journaling before bed, walks at sunset, storytelling with grandchildren, quiet tea time, breathing exercises, all became anchors of joy. These rituals didn't require grand resources or rare opportunities. They simply required mindfulness and consistency. Over time, they cultivated a reservoir of happiness that sustained me through hardship, fatigue, and uncertainty. Finally, the habit of embracing mortality daily reshaped my priorities. I do not mean morbid obsession, but a conscious acknowledgement of life's finitude. By reminding myself that each day could be my last, I learned to focus on what truly mattered: love, connection, growth, contribution, and authenticity. Decisions became clearer, distractions less alluring, petty conflicts less relevant. Embracing mortality wasn't about fear. It was about clarity, presence, and the courage to live boldly. When these habits converged, truth-telling, forgiveness, curiosity, presence, disciplined freedom, reflection, mentorship, gratitude, generosity, adaptability, celebrating small wins, rituals of joy, and embracing mortality, my life transformed beyond recognition. I moved from reactive existence to intentional living. I replaced regret with insight, fear with courage, distraction with focus, and superficiality with depth. The richness of these years surpassed anything I had imagined during my youth. During the decades, I wasted chasing validation and accumulation. I tell you this because you can start today. None of these habits require perfection, immense resources, or extraordinary talent. They require awareness, courage, and small, consistent action. One truth spoken, one apology offered, one new topic explored, one moment of presence, one act of generosity. Each can spark a chain reaction that reshapes your life. By age 102, I can